this is why I think the Ohio thing is actually a really good example for you, because taking the reins of the United States of America before this is proven on any sort of like statewide level or even citywide level, I think is very terrifying for people, especially it exists in this bureaucratic system. Yeah. But proving it in a place.
And this gets back to where we started, right? This is why I was. Well, people should care about. Yeah, no, my view is.
But prove it there, and then all of a sudden everybody else.
To your point, I just want to pick up on that for a second, because right now you guys we're all millennial or whatever, but Gen Z, the phrase "that's so Ohio" is like a butt of a joke.
Yeah, it's a meme.
It's a meme, and I think that's sad. Actually, I want the next time that we send a mission to the moon or to Mars that is successful.
What is it?
Like that's so Ohio. That's what I want us to say.
What is an example they use now? Like I want.
Oh, like something super lame, like something super lame and boring. They're like, oh, that's so Ohio. Okay. Like that's like an online Gen Z meme type expression.
Are you?
I want actually when we do excellent boundary breaking things as a country, I want to go back to saying that's so Ohio for that. Because, by the way, in the 1950s, people don't realize this. 5 of the top 15 cities that were the wealthiest cities in the country, 5 of the top 15 were in Ohio. Toledo was the glass capital. Akron was the rubber capital. Youngstown and Cleveland were the steel capital of the world.
From Ohio?
You have some roots in Ohio, north in Cleveland, Cleveland area. John Glenn, Neil Armstrong. I mean, Cincinnati was the consumer products capital. Dayton was the compute power capital for much of the Industrial Revolution. That wasn't that long ago. That was in the 1950s. And I think that there's a risk to saying that, okay, we want to go back to that. Well, the reality is we're probably not going to be the rubber capital or the glass capital again.
Yeah.
But it could be the AI data capital, could be the capital of biotech, could be the capital of aerospace and space exploration, could be the capital of semiconductor production, defense industrial base in the country of producing the bleeding edge of technology that Silicon Valley might have in bits, so what we can create in atoms, nuclear energy, fusion, where the United States has an opportunity to lead. There's no reason that the heartland of the country that was a pioneer state, that was a frontier state, that was the heart of the Industrial Revolution, that has to somehow be relegated to yesterday. I think there is an opportunity to say from the center of the country, you show what was possible in Silicon Valley for the last 20 years.
Just be careful running on that. 20. Yeah. Be careful running on that, because you're talking about all these institutions that aren't existing in Ohio. So to people who are living there, it's like, oh, he's going to bring a bunch of stuff that I'm not involved in, so he must be bringing workers and people who don't live here.
We want to do it from. We want to leverage.
I'm just saying, be careful.
And why do I favor Ohio doing it? It's not random. It's the country. It's the state in the country that still has access to some of the best waterways. 60% of the population of North America is literally within a one-day drive of Ohio. Access to the same talent base that I think we've always had, which is a great talent base. I think there's a big concern about AI taking jobs. I think we can actually use AI to make jobs instead of take jobs. Everyone's focused on the algorithms and the computing power, which by the DeepSeek thing was itself a calling a bluff on. But what we haven't focused enough on is training people on how to use AI.
Yeah,
actually, in different domains. Training human beings on how to use AI, we're not doing enough. We're training the AI, but we're not training humans on how to use AI. I think Ohio could be the leading state in the country if you have the kind of governor, the kind of leadership who makes that a priority. And then you show the rest of the country what's actually possible.
Are you going to take donations from major corporations when you run?
I did not. Well, first of all, corporations, there's a whole complicated. I got to familiarize myself with the whole campaign finance landscape. Yeah. So, how we do this. But I'm definitely not going to be bought and paid for. I mean, since I've lived the American dream.
Don't they all say that?
Well, I think a lot of people. I don't blame a lot of people who can't do it differently, right? So I'm not going to blame somebody who's in a different position. Our family has been blessed to live the American dream, and I'm happy to talk about my business background story a little bit too. What's that?
Net worth. Just tell him. Just put him in his.
I'm like a put him in his poor place. Yeah, but I'm like a paltry billionaire, right? There's many people who have billions.
Put him in his poor place. I know what this motherfuckers work.
There's many people who have billions. I just have billion. I'm like a poor billionaire. I'm like a poor billionaire.
Brokey.
I'm 39 years old. My wife has lived the American dream. Her focus was never financial, but she saves lives every day at the Ohio State Cancer Hospital. This country has allowed us to have independence from a system of being somebody else's pawn. And so it just wouldn't make sense, right? Even when I ran for US president, we took over $30 million out of our bank account and put it in the campaign, which gave me the ability to to speak my mind freely, and for better or worse, that sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad, electorally speaking. But I think it's always good as a leader. And so one of the things I learned through that process, though, is you don't want to just be like you want to have impact, whatever allows you to maximally have impact. And so if I was to have won the presidential race, even that $30 million that I put in was a paltry sum to the super PACs that supported the other candidates. I beat out a lot of governors and former senators, but I ended up fourth. If you're talking about what the difference between the people who are number 2 and number 3, a lot more super PAC spending made the difference. And so my view is,
but then when those people get elected,
I'm not going to be beholden to anybody.
Those people are going to be like, nah, we don't want you doing this.
I'm not going to be beholden to anybody. And actually, in Ohio, there's a bit of a culture of a little bit of a lot of states have this pay-to-play culture. I think you got to end that if you got to actually serve the actual people.
So how can you raise money and end it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you don't make promises to people.
Well, why would I give you $100 million?
Exactly.
If you believe in my vision, come aboard. And if not, don't.
So then what if you don't get that money? What do you do?
First of all, at least we're backstopped and blessed, as I told you, what we do with my presidential campaign. And the second is, the way I look at it is, it's my job to deliver the message. And if that's going to be a winning message, that's going to be the job of people who want to support us. Grassroots donations, by the way, were a great experience we had in the presidential campaign. I think we probably had more $1 donors than anybody who had been in a similar position. $1 donors, but it actually sends a message of a bottom-up grassroots version of it. So you don't want people who are beholden. You can't afford to have that. I think it's one of the things that Donald Trump did this time around, which is pretty smart, is he's not beholden. He's a billionaire. But if people want to support him, he wasn't saying no either. So I think that you want to change the country, be at once not just living in your own echo chamber and satisfying yourself and patting yourself on the back for doing what made you feel like you were sending the right virtue signal, but at the same time, stay true to your principles at the same time too. So I think that's the way I think about it. You got to focus on impact.
Trump got a lot of money from Elon. Do you feel like that's maybe a conflict of interest of the amount of influence Elon has?
So I think one of the things that makes
fucking great.
So I think the thing. What do you mean? What's
I love
a
that.
good question? I like this.
Yeah. Because it is.
He doesn't shy away. So my view is, I think the best you're going to get in this country is you've got somebody who is independent of that system. Donald Trump is independent of that system. He won in 2016 with effectively an FU to the system that tried to stop him, and that's what the people viewed as the attractive quality to put him there. He's a multi-billionaire, right? So he doesn't need that money. Now, he really is. I mean, it's just, there's no doubt about it in terms of where he is today. And so I think that's all else equal a good thing. Now, do I prefer a system? I'll tell you what my ideal state is. I would love a system in which the influence of mega money on American politics was virtually non-existent. Mega money, right? Small dollar donations I like, but I would love that system. That's not the system we live in today. It's just not. And you have George Soros, you have a bunch of other people on the left that, by the way, they used to say the same thing in 2010. Corporations are not people. Citizens United, we don't want that. Until we got the Soros checks, and then we're not going to worry about that any longer. And, I think that would I rather have a check and balance in that system than not? Yeah, if both sides play the same game, it kind of negates itself out, which is kind of interesting as a way to look at it. And in many ways, one of the things we've seen, and this should be encouraging, is the people at our best are able to still see through it. So if you look at Michael Bloomberg, right?
Yeah.
He tried to run for U.S. president spending like boatloads of money. It just didn't work, actually. You have candidates even this last time around that have had boatloads of money try to spend by them. You're never gonna, a turd is always gonna weigh more than the money that could lift it. Okay.
Yeah, but money
I think
coming from both sides doesn't really cancel itself out. It's just the corporations still have all the power and the people don't.
Would I rather, let me ask you, would I rather have a check and balance? I would rather have at least competitive forces that are 360 degrees. But the ideal state, would our ideal state be one in which the influence of money on electoral politics was non-existent? Yeah, I think that'd be an ideal state.
But wouldn't that put billionaires in a more advantageous position because then they could fund their own campaigns?
We could talk, I mean, if you want, I do think that it would, but at least they're not bought and paid for by somebody else. Somebody else can see that.
Right. Bought and paid for by yourself.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that where I am though is also pragmatically looking at this, free speech is important in the country. You want people to be able to express themselves, and then you could say that, if they don't fund the candidate directly, they can fund other causes. I don't think that's the biggest problem in the country right now. If you got checks and balances in a lot of different directions, yeah, most billionaires in this country are not on the same side of most issues, right? You got billionaires who are on different sides of a lot of different issues. I think that that's okay. I think that that's okay. It's not the fight. It's not the next fight I'm going to pick. Okay. It's not the next crusade I'm on a problem to solve. The next crusade I'm on a problem to solve is restore the American dream, actually ensure that the best person's able to get the job through an actual meritocracy, restoring the idea that through your own hard work and dedication, you're able to get a good education and get ahead in this country, restore the center of the country being a place where we have the bleeding edge of innovation in America. That's where my next fight is. And yeah, you're right. You don't want people who are going to be instruments for special corporate interests. Being independently successful allows you to have that independence. At some point in the distant future, is that system itself going to be changed? One might hope so. But in the meantime, I think you got pretty good checks and balances across the board where you got different moneyed interests with different competing influences.
We can agree to disagree on that.
Yeah, well,
I think that's the biggest problem involved.
Yeah. I think
that's why everything moves so slow, because they want to pass something and then they have to speak to their donors. Like, is it okay for me to pass this?
Yeah. So look, I think
that's when nothing happens.
You're not wrong. But I do think that you got to pick what you're going to pick as your next battle to change. And as a governor of one state, you're not going to change that. I'll tell you that, right? So at the level of a political culture, overall, at the level of a nation, could that be the stuff of an actual political reawakening in our country at some point in time? It could be. But I think right now, there's a much more achievable mission that I'm actually pretty optimistic about.
Is there a state?
I always tell you what I believe I can do. Everything we've talked about so far, I think I can do. I think we can help do it at the state of Ohio, set an example for the rest of the country. And what we might aspire to, I'm not going to make a false promise on, but you bring up a good point.